Good morning once again. You're still watching Sunrise at Sea. My name is Priva Elibaz. Welcome back from the news.
Good morning.
Nauma and Apollo Sarah. Well, now it's time for our Twitter jabs. And the conversation we're looking at today is in regards to the new working agreement that was signed by the opposition political parties in Uganda, with the exception, of course, of the Democratic Party. And that we see that the reason why the opposition parties actually came together to sign this new working agreement is actually in they based on the recent alleged election cheating that happened in Kayunga, Omoro, and Soroti by-elections. And they say their common goal is actually to oust President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. So joining me at the center of this conversation is none other than Aggie Uwase. Good morning.
Good morning, Priva.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Like, give me some energy. Give me some energy. It's midweek.
It's what, the third day of August.
Yes.
I don't know, but I really hope that this month goes well. For some reason, the energy is a little bit low. Maybe it's because of the economic crisis in the country, and maybe the other multiple. But otherwise, besides that, it's a good day.
The superstitions have started.
They have started.
Positive energy. There has to be a way that you have to have a positive mindset regardless. I really think August is going to go well. Even if I had a bad day today, I would still think August is going to be a fantastic month.
It's good to have hope. You know, I was actually going through social media, in particular Twitter, and I was seeing people that like, August has actually failed. I'm like, guys, we're just 2 days in. How has it failed already? Well, for me, I still have hope. I mean, it's just 3 days in. We'll actually probably end well.
Let me tell you this, you can lose everything, but one thing that you can never lose in this life is actually hope. Well, getting back into our conversation today, we see that actually opposition leaders, including Dr. Kizza Besigye, as well as Robert Kyagulanyi, also known as Bobby Wine, they signed an agreement in which they committed to joint efforts and strategies geared towards ousting President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Now, the agreement was signed during a meeting that was held at Hotel Africana on Monday afternoon, and it actually attracted leaders from 4 political parties, including the FDC, that is the Forum for Democratic Change Party, the National Unity Platform, that is NUP, Justice Forum, that is JEEMA, and the People's Progressive Party. Now, in their joint statement that was read by actually the NUP Secretary General, that is David Louis Rubongoya, opposition leaders noted that the recent alleged, blatant election malpractices, particularly in, the by-elections of Kayunga, Omoro, and Soroti, just like I mentioned, it served the basis of this working agreement. And actually, part of the joint statement read that in all the last general or by-elections, several political parties and formations have continuously participated in belief in democracy and rule of law as the modest means through which they could achieve a peaceful transition for the nation and change of leaders at lower levels. Unfortunately, the quality of elections has now gone from bad to worse, each election being worse than the previous one.
My question is it just now that they're actually realizing this? Because this happened in the 2021 general elections. It has been happening in all the other by-elections, the one we saw in Omoro. I mean, there have been, after the by-elections, they are taking them to court, or actually saying they're taking them to court, and, it never comes to fruition. So for me, my issue is it now, or maybe is now the right time? Now, we do see that in the most recent by-election, members of the National Unity Platform and the Forum for Democratic Change teamed together to support Moses Atan of the Forum for Democratic Change Party on the final day of the campaign that happened, in Soroti East City by-election. Now, the Lord Mayor of Kampala, Arias Lukwago, and who is also the Vice President of the FDC in the Central Region, committed the Forum for Democratic Change to the agreement and stated that they are prepared to do all within their power to oppose President Museveni, whom he referred to as a tyrant, as long as they keep on doing very unlawful things when it comes to elections.
When it comes to the elections. And actually, several leaders had so much to say, and Arias Lukwago, who is the Lord Mayor for Kampala, said that the NRM leaders' behavior in Soroti by-election actually amounted to treason, thus urging that the oppressed Ugandans should band together, support the opposition leaders in this new pact, and use the legal authority granted to them by the Constitution to overthrow Museveni's government. Now, we see, I like how Arias Lukwago always says, listen, Ugandans, the Constitution, Article 3 provides for, provides for these things. Like, you have the power. The people, the power belongs to you, the people. So you should stick up and, fight for what is right for you as Ugandans. But I doubt if this argument is actually on the right track to getting Ugandans to actually rally behind these opposition leaders and protect their votes.
And besides that, I also do think that maybe the citizens of this country, maybe some of them, a section of them, could have lost, confidence in the opposition. You're talking about Arias Lukwago himself. He actually defected from the Democratic Party
DP, yes,
to the FDC party. In the recent days, we've seen Honorable Norbert Mao, who right now kind of belongs to the NRM.
A very good welcome yesterday.
Much as he hasn't come out
Parliament
to state it categorically clear, but yes, it's actually, the writing is on the wall. So for me, I feel like the citizens of this country are saying, or would be having the assumptions in their head, is actually the opposition standing tall? I
actually think the mistrust that Ugandans have in the opposition parties stems from the fact that this is not the first argument that the opposition parties are actually, engaging in. And actually, when you look at the brief history of these, how would I call it, of these inter-party cooperations, of these arguments that the opposition has signed in Uganda, you see that basically it stems from the NRM being in power from way back in 1986 until where we are now. So when you look at actually the brief history, you see that between 1986, when the NRM of course came to power through the guerrilla war, and 2005, Uganda was actually governed under a movement system that was characterized by a prohibition on former political parties' activities. Now during this period, actually the historical political parties, the ones that we knew as Uganda People's Congress, that is the UPC, and the Democratic Party that had been at the heart of Uganda's politics since independence, had actually struggled to survive. But in 1996, despite the ban on these parties, the DP and the UPC set aside their long-standing differences, and under the banner of the Inter-Party Forces for Cooperation, supported the presidential candidacy for Paul Sebogere against President Yoweri Museveni of the NRM. Fast forward to 2001, President Museveni is a long-term ally and personal doctor during the Bush War, that is the Dr. Kizza Besigye, also defected from NRM, and without signing an agreement, the opposition parties, namely that would be the Conservative Party, the DP and the UPC, all joined the Reform Agenda, a pressure group of others who had broken ranks with the NRM and fielded Dr. Kizza Besigye against President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni in the 2001 general elections.
All these things do not, I think somehow we are now used to this, that they don't come as a surprise, because you talked about Dr. Kizza Besigye moving from the NRM to the Forum for Democratic Change Party.
Yes.
And he also took part in like about 2001,
general
2006,
elections, 2011, 2016,
and that was the last.
And that was the last time.
Four general elections as the Forum for Democratic Change candidate. Now we do see that in the recent past, he now has his own political party, and that is, or you can actually call it a movement, which is the People's Front for Transition, and he is the leader at the moment. So I don't know whether he still subscribes to the Forum for Democratic Change or he's just part of the opposition. Now himself, he said that he was more than happy to learn that the opposition leaders are now accepting that participation in elections might not cause the much desired change in Uganda. Now, Dr. Kizza Besigye, who is also a four-time presidential candidate, just like we mentioned earlier, pointed out that the NRM administration organizes only as a window, organizes elections only as a window to legitimize their say, or rather their stay in power, saying that they are being given the mandate by the population, and that incidentally, that's what he said. And he also went on to say that the opposition has over the time participated, thus adding a stamp to the legitimate process. So the opposition actually believes that elections in this country may not front change.
But I think,
so what will? Because now if they are, in this coalition that they're forming, I mean, I thought it's about them, to make sure that they protect, the citizens protect their vote. That means the electoral process will have to still, go on. So if they have no confidence in the electoral process itself, or if they think that when it comes to change, elections will not actually bring about change in this country. So what will?
Well, I think what I have to say about Dr. Kizza Besigye, no, I'm not Dr. Kizza Besigye, all this situation of people saying that they don't have any confidence in the opposition right now at the moment. I feel like this is information that Dr. Kizza Besigye talked about back in the previous years. He did say at the end of the day, you cannot win an election in Uganda against the government that came into power through a bush war. And at the time, Bobby Wine, of course, that is Robert Chaguanyi, they were going, through a back and forth between the NRM and the FDC camps. And actually, Bobby Wine came out and said, well, if you say democracy doesn't actually work in Uganda, the elections are just a sham in Uganda, why did you contest 4 times? So he went in, also for his elections because he wanted to test it. I think basically it was coming from a place of, you guys have denied me a position in your political parties. I cannot stand on any of your political parties, you know, for any representation. So let me go and see for myself. And he actually went and saw for himself. He actually got about, I think, 34%, which was not far from what Dr. Kizza Besigye got in the previous elections. So I like the fact that they are now back on the same page. But actually, if you see some of the comments that Dr. Kizza Besigye made on Monday afternoon, I feel like he was more happy that now they're on the same wavelength. So. They are the same understanding that actually elections in Uganda may not be able to cut it for opposition political parties, especially if they are to win.
They don't
have
stand together.
Representation in parliament.
Well,
yes.
I don't know. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer and say maybe this is some kind of hypocrisy, because we have seen in the past, you know, in the past by-elections whereby the Forum for Democratic Change rather members were actually accusing NUP of not supporting them at all. And this time round, the most concluded by-election, the rumor is that it's because the NUP actually did not have a competent candidate. That is why they decided, you know, to support the Forum for Democratic Change candidate. We are going to be seeing 2 by-elections coming, one in Busongora and another one in Gogonyo. Yes. So, Gogonyo, and the opposition chief whip, and that is John Baptist Nambeshe, I hope I've actually pronounced his name right. He called on all the opposition, including the FDC, to actually support them in these coming by-elections. So my question is, if the Forum for Democratic Change also affront their candidates and they're actually strong as the NUP candidates, shall we see, you know, them come to, you know, a round table and agree on which candidate to actually support as the opposition, or they'll actually be pulling groups because they all want representation in parliament?
Of course, they'll all want representation, and that's where the real opposition is still going to be exposed. That's just like it has been exposed in the previous years. We also see that back in the day, they were supposed to front one presidential candidate, and we all know how that ended. It never.
Each camp actually wants power. Each camp wants to take on power. So,
and I feel like there's also a bit of, you know, we have been in this politics thing for a long time, and then we have youngins, we have newbies. We have newbies from NUP just coming on board and wanting, you know, to just assume power, and that's something that is still going to bite the opposition, because at the end of the day, I feel like people who have been playing the opposition politics for a long time do not feel like the other young ones are rightfully deserving, you know, just coming and taking over. So
especially
that's also something that is going to affect the opposition.
Yeah, especially everything that they've had to go through. If we remember the 2016 general elections, what Dr. Kizza Besigye had to go through, it was really tough. So I would understand where he comes from, a place of, you know, I have had to struggle, I've had to go through all these hurdles, and then you come and you know, you're taking over the opposition. How does that come into place?
And actually, still speaking of the public fights between Besigye and Bobi Wine camps, they actually started a couple of years ago, and actually during the Arua municipality by-election in 2018 that led to the death of Bobi Wine's driver, that is Yasin Kawuma, as they canvassed support for Kassiano Wadri. Actually, Bobi Wine is said to have beckoned supporters of FDC candidate Bruce Musema to join his group as Besigye addressed his supporters. Of course, a good number did respond. They responded to his, you know, his enticement of them to join his camp. And then actually Besigye also commented before he actually left his particular rally that those who call themselves opposition have come to disrupt Musema's rally. Now, before the Arua wounds could actually heal, we see the Democratic Party later that year launched what they called the DP Bloc coalition, which still happened at Hotel Africana in Kampala, and Bobi Wine was actually invited. Now, in his speech, he said at the time, he was the Chadondo East member of Parliament, he said at the time he confronted Besigye for dismissing elections as a way of changing leadership in the country. That was the time when he came out and said, and I quote, yes, he said, you cannot participate in an election for 4 times, and on the 5th time, you come and say that democracy does not work. He told, you know, we're letting supporters, people like chaos. Ugandans actually love a lot of chaos.
A lot of it.
And he went on to say, we believe democracy works. A shaky win gives Museveni a chance to steal the votes, but we are going to give him a knockout. And here we are. Is this a knockout?
Here we are. Now we do see that the Forum for Democratic Change President Engineer Patrick Amuriat, also softened his party's stance on the National Unity Platform, and that was in the recent past. Now, we do see that in October 10th, that was last year, the leading opposition party in parliament, which is NUP, said they don't have to lead any struggle against a dictator if they don't wish, and rather that is what Amuriat said, that NUP doesn't have to lead any struggle against a dictator if they don't wish and are not prepared to have or have no capacity to it. He further went on to say that Nelson Mandela led the struggle against apartheid in South Africa from outside parliament. So FDC doesn't need anybody's permission to struggle. Amuriat did actually write this on his Twitter, and that is because they were saying that NUP is not backing up FDC candidates in the by-elections. Yes, and we also do see that they went on to say that they had consultations with the NUP UG, that is a National Unity Platform, and any other Ugandans of choice to join them in the struggle to actually liberate this country and make sure that the by-elections are not rigged.
Well, still speaking about the argument, we see that actually the NUP party president, that is Robert Chagulanyi, also noted that it is high time they did something to change this situation that he said is worrying. Now, Chagulanyi also, who squarely agreed with Besigye that elections may not cause regime change, noted that they should, however, participate in them to get a chance to sensitize their supporters. I think Bobby Wine really wants to see himself declared a winner of sorts, because he feels like it's coming. And I understand, because he has a lot of support, he has a lot of people who are backing him up, but until it happens, I think he will not be convinced that actually elections may not be a clear path to a regime change in Uganda.
I mean, it could be different for him. It doesn't have to be the same thing with everyone. Yes, I do believe, I mean, the last four general elections where Forum for Democratic Change actually lost, 5 to be exact. It doesn't mean that it will be the same thing for NUP.
Well,
I don't want to think so.
Well, let's take a look at a couple of your reactions of our social media. And our first tweet comes in from Chifefe Chiza Besigye, and it says, now heading in the same direction, elections organized by the NRM Museveni junta will not free our country and address the mega socio-economic crisis we face. Time to rally Ugandans to court, and I quote, to defend rights and end election madness. Yes.
Ooh. And next it comes from the National Unity Platform, and it says, it was actually a thread, and it says, earlier today, President at His Excellency Bobby Wine, together with several leaders in the NUP, converged with fellow leaders from change-seeking forces, including the Forum for Democratic Change, JEEMA, PPP, and PFT. And they went on to say in a next tweet, they met to share thoughts, but also communicate to our people on the general way forward. In the wake of the sham elections we have witnessed of late in Soroti, Kayunga, and Omoro, among other by-elections.
Yes, well, the next tweet comes in from Bobby Wine, and it says, I converged with fellow leaders from change-seeking forces, including NUP, FDC, JEEMA, the People's Progressive Party, and the PFT. We shared thoughts, but also communicated to our people on the general way forward in the wake of the sham elections we've witnessed of late in Soroti, Kayunga, Omoro, and etc. and etc. And actually, when you look at Bobby Wine's comments, and I'm going to quote exactly what he said. He said, I think the time has come for us to change our gospel, for us to change our message and be more realistic to the electorate. We're going to the election promising change, even at the MP level, even when we know that when one becomes a member of parliament under the Museveni regime, apart from agitating, apart from using the parliamentary platform, we can change very little. Therefore, it is my considered view that our message should be a revolutionary message, whether campaigning for a member of parliament or even an LC1. The main agenda should be using that election to sensitize people, but to also make that election, no matter how small it is, a spark to chase the junta. He also said, I think the election should be more than sensitization as opposed to winning. In any case, we know that Museveni decides weeks and sometimes even months who the winner will be. That is what Chagulanyi said. And I feel like it's sort of, you know, it's sort of like, it's ironic in a way. You know, you're here confusing yourself. You're saying at the end of the day, we need to get a different approach to this thing. Yes, you're saying we are going to come and we are going to protect our votes as the opposition in Uganda, and then you come out and you say, but in any case, we know that Museveni decides weeks and sometimes even months who the winner will be. So are you
contradictory? Actually,
it's very contradictory. It's very ironic that you're saying you're coming to prove that this has to work for Ugandans. This is going to work for the opposition in Uganda, but then you come out and you say, but the decision has already been made.
It's already precedented.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, That is why I'm saying, because if you're saying or telling these things to their electorates, then I mean, at the end of the day, they will lose it or lose confidence in the opposition and say, why do I even have to go to vote if I am supporting an opposition candidate? And the same opposition members are actually saying that President Museveni or the NRM party they always have the results even before the election or by-election. Then why would I actually go to vote?
Participate into them or even get into them when you already know the outcome. But I have to commend Bobby Wine, because still at the same press conference that happened at Hotel Africana on Monday afternoon, he used that chance to call upon the NUP and the FDC members to stop creating that imaginary rivalry between him and Besigye, but rather to unite both of them, because they are all, chasing one common goal, and that is actually to see that there's leadership change in Uganda.
Still a lot of hypocrisy. You see why I say that? And after the 2021 general elections, when they were now electing for the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of Parliament, you remember Honorable Semujunganda was the one who was actually vying for speakership from the side of the opposition. NUP didn't have a candidate, so it was FDC and then the NRM. But what happened, you see, in Parliament, they're actually 90 opposition members by then, after the 2021 general elections. So in the speakership race, Honorable Semujunganda actually got very few votes, because you see NUP has 57 members of parliament, exactly, and FDC has 34 members of parliament. So when you actually Honorable Semujunganda got only 35 votes out of the 90 opposition members of parliament, which means some of the votes from the opposition either went to the NRM candidate or did not, or they were invalid, or maybe they did not vote. So that's what I'm talking about, hypocrisy.
Yes.
Because if it's about coalition, if it's about let's stand together, if it's about let's fight together and make sure that we attain the change that we so much need in this country, then they should be behind each other. So after that, that's when all these rifts come into play. So what happened if opposition actually doesn't have confidence in their own candidates?
No, it leaves a lot to be desired.
Yes, a lot.
It leaves a lot to be. But still, looking at the chaos that happens between NRM and I beg your pardon, that happens between the FDC and the NUP, and still looking at their history. Remember the time where when Besigye was attacked as he exited a radio talk show sometime back in. I don't remember the particular year, but then when he was exiting a radio talk show in Mengo, and he was attacked by youth wearing that were wearing the people power t-shirts. And you know what Bobby Wine came out and said? He said, and I quote, I'm not even going to quote him, I'm just going to basically paraphrase it, but Bobby Wine said that he had no control over his supporters and quickly blamed the attack on state operatives, saying that they could have planted detractors to derail the opposition unity they were working towards. Now, I didn't see him condemn violence anywhere and say,
what are the odds that actually those the people power not people power movement, but those guys who are donned in the people power t-shirts and claiming to be from the people power, what are the odds that they actually belong to the party, to the NUP party? The odds it could actually be true that maybe there are people from another party, another political party, could be NRM, could be any other party.
Should we say it was a coincidence? Because at that time they were heavily fighting each other, the camp from FDC and the camps from the NUP. That was a time where it was a little bit intense. So what a coincidence that the time Besigye is leaving a talk show is being attacked by people wearing people power t-shirts, not UPC, not CP, not DP, not even NRM.
Politics is a dirty game, and I tell you what, sometimes your enemies are always watching. So they wait for that moment where they can actually come in, and that is how they beat you at your own game. Politics is a dirty game. So you wouldn't know. They could be from another political party, strong political party. Just saying.
It happens.
Yes.
Well, the next thing comes in from Bobby Wine, and it says, we have committed ourselves to using the upcoming elections to organize and rally the population to defend their democratic rights. We must decisively end the electoral madness that has bedeviled our country. The next time we go into an election, if we do, it won't be business as usual. Now, what does this mean?
That will be 2026. That's a few years, by the way, from now. It might seem like a long way, like the next, 4 years?
In 3 years.
No, actually 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's a very short time. So I hope that now they are choosing to really, I hope genuinely stand together, that it actually works out. But you see, the problem comes when eventually the general elections are coming, like when they're just a few months probably to the general elections. you've heard of the saying that people are always power hungry. Like everyone actually wants to attain power. So I think that is where we might see, I'm just saying because it's a possibility that it could happen, where you find we're saying FDC, NUP, we are fronting this candidate, but there's another candidate on the other hand who is from FDC, and he says, you know what, I actually also want to be the member of parliament of this constituency. So what happens is this person rather from the FDC camp whom they haven't fronted will choose to go independent. And the aftermath of that is usually these people who end up standing as independent candidates, whether they win or lose, they eventually cross to the NRM party. NRM party. If we were to realize most of the by-elections that have been happening, even the most recent one in Soroti East, that was a former Forum for Democratic Change member, and then went to the stood on an independent ticket in 2021 general elections, and now was vying on the NRM ticket. So it's more of, if you do not accept me, I still want to have power. I still want to be the member of parliament of this constituency. If you do not, then I'll go where I am accepted.
But I think actually Ugandans are not going into politics just to serve Ugandans. I don't think that's the primary reason or the primary goal as to why people actually actively engage in politics, at least from what we've seen. You know, it's not even based off assumptions. It's basically what we've seen. People get into parliament, enjoy their money for their 5 years. If they're lucky to go back for a second term, they enjoy more money and then leave it up to the Ugandans to, you know, tussle it out on their own.
Yeah.
So terrible.
That's the reason why I love Kabarole district. I know you've heard of it.
Yes, please.
They are members of parliament. It's one term. So what they usually say is, go for your 5 years. If you do not do what your constituents want you to do, you're out. It's always 5 years. The only long-serving member of parliament is Honorable Alex Ruhunda, who is for Fort Portal City. The others, it's 5 years and you're gone. However, this is different with other constituencies. You find someone has been long-serving for about 3-4 terms and they're actually not delivering, and you know,
and actually the same thing you said happened in Kabalore also happens in one area that I know, that is Rampara County. You have your one term and you're out of the way. I remember Vincent Chamadidi came at that time. He was in parliament for 5 years, did nothing, and he was shown the door, you know, get out of the way. So
it's so sad that even when people actually going to vote for these members of parliament, when you hear the things they say, they're like, let's give him the votes, let him go and eat for his let him go and eat for his 5 years, and you know, let someone else go and eat.
Katolwa actually said, you know what, you guys, give me my chance, let me go and eat. And he did. They gave him his chance. He went to eat his money and he's out of parliament now.
Out of parliament, but was grumbling the other day and, you know, going against the NUP party and the opposition because he did not win this time around.
You have to stay relevant one or another.
So sad.
Politics, yes.
Oh yes. Our next tweet is actually a joint statement of political leaders, parties, and formations against the brazen thuggery of elections in Uganda, as exemplified in the by-election of Kayunga, Omoro, and Soroti. That is of 1st August 2022. That's when the statement was put up.
Yes.
And it says, fellow countrymen and women, the people of Uganda have for so many years been irritated by the brazen rigging of elections by President Museveni's regime. The past 5 general elections have been far from free and fair. At every election cycle, President Museveni and his small clique of henchmen have continuously usurped the will of the people of Uganda, aided by the military, the Electoral Commission, and all manner of state apparatus. The judiciary, which should ordinarily dispense justice in electoral matters, has not done so because it has been equally hijacked by the state.
I think everyone is saying that, you know, the Electoral Commission is not as independent as it should be. And I think, you know, we've witnessed that in the previous elections that happened in Kayunga, Omoro, and Soroti. But actually, when you still look at the joint statement from these political parties in the opposition, among the things that they did highlight that characterized the by-elections included, number one, in Kayunga, they said the Electoral Commission supplied pre-ticked ballot papers to regime operatives. They arrested over 100 of Honorable Harriet Nakwede's polling agents and supervisors the night before and on election day in the hope of carrying out ballot stuffing undeterred. Now, Robin Nabanja, who is the Prime Minister of Uganda, went on, they say, the statement claims she went on a bribing spree, some of which was captured on TV, and despite all the ballot stuffing and violence, Honorable Harriet Nakwede emerged winner with a difference of over 15,000 votes. Now, shamelessly, still the statement says the Electoral Commission announced the NRM candidate winner without any results, and contrary contrary to the law, the Electoral Commission refused to hand over a copy of the tally sheet relied on to declare results at the tally center because there was none. Now, they gave themselves several days to doctor both the tally sheet and the DR forms, and the regime has since ensured that the election petition is dismissed on the most ridiculous grounds. The will of the people of Kayunga was usurped. Now, that was in regards to the by-election that happened in Kayunga, but the same statement says in Omoro, the regime took advantage of the poverty-stricken population and engaged in the open bribery with items like soap and maize flour, and some people were bribed with as low as 2,000 shillings. And the statement goes on to say, early morning on voting day, regime operatives working with the crime intelligence moved on from polling station to polling station, arresting Honorable Tolit Simon polling agents and supervisors. But by the end of the day, over 60 polling agents and supervisors of the 84 polling stations had been arrested, with the majority of polling stations not manned by the polling agents assigned. They had a field day staffing. Now, one Moses Kalangwa and other thugs took over the election, and yet again, the Electoral Commission had supplied pre-ticked ballot papers to regime operatives who transported them in their vehicles without number plates. Now, whoever questioned the open day thuggery was quickly arrested and detained. Hundreds of people were ferried from the neighboring districts to participate in the voting, and despite a very low voter turnout in Omoro, the Electoral Commission gifted Mr. Andrew Olanya with over 14,000 votes. The statement goes on to say the Electoral Commission refused to avail copies of the tally sheet and the DR forms relied on to declare results within the time frame within which to lodge a petition.
I love the way they said gifted. It's
Gifted.
like, this is your gift, please. Take on. Let me ask one question when it comes, because, you know, all the claims are people were bribed, you know, they were taken advantage of because, you know, they're in a dire state of, you know, you don't have soap, you don't have food, you have nothing. You're given as low as 2,000 Uganda shillings to buy your vote. So I still think that as a human being, you shouldn't be bought. I mean, everyone has a price, that is for sure. But if they give you 5,000 Uganda shillings, they are trying to buy your vote. Is it a must that they have to push you to the polling station, to the ballot box for you to tick it and put it there? Unless you tell me that they're always, you know, they're always there supervising, making sure that you actually tick right and then put your ballot in there, then you cannot put this on the okay, the people, the perpetrators, that the people that are claiming actually, you know, are, how do you call it, that they are bribing voters. I mean, we cannot keep on. This has happened in the last like 4 general elections of, you know, people being bribed with about soap, people being bribed with as low as 10,000, 5,000, 2,000 Uganda shillings. Can't Ugandans just stand up and say, you see what, our vote is actually very important. We cannot be bribed to
Actually,
vote.
if I know vote bribery is one of the factors that contribute to what electoral malpractices actually constitute of. But then I feel like it's actually immaterial. Voter bribery is immaterial because, like, you saw the joint statement and how they highlighted in Omoro and Kayunga that at the end of the day they were already supplying pre-ticked ballot boxes to the polling stations. So it's like whether they give you that 2,000 shillings for a small bar of soap, or if they give you some money to buy a kilo of sugar, at the end of the day I feel like it's immaterial because it's already cast in stone what the results are actually supposed to be.
So you actually seem to believe that, you know, it's already cast in stone.
If you were to ask me, I would think so. I would, depending on, you know, what we've seen in the previous by-elections, I really see this is how things are actually happening. Because still the statement says in Soroti, police and the military spent the night prior to the election raiding homes of Honorable Moses Satan's polling agents and supervisors. FDC leaders, including the party president, were arrested and detained in Dokolo and other districts. Now, the Electoral Commission yet again supplied regime operatives with pre-ticked ballot papers in favor of the NRM candidate, many of whom were caught red-handed by ordinary people and rescued by the police. Now, vehicles still without number plates were deployed to transport the pre-ticked ballot papers, and every leader who dared to question or deter the ongoing ballot stuffing was quickly arrested and detained. Some polling stations were closed before time, and all the voting materials confiscated by regime officials. At other polling stations, the residual ballot papers at the close of the polling were all ticked in favor of NRM's Ariko and thrown into ballot boxes before the sham counting could start. At the end of the tally center, several false results were read. No tally sheet was provided back to the results, and the Electoral Commission yet again conspired with the regime to rob the people of Soroti of their victory. Okay. The pre-ticked ballot papers, for me, you cannot come back from that, whether there is soap or not.
Okay, already cast in stone, so why do we still go to the elections? I mean, for me, I would think, this is my suggestion, this is my opinion as Uwase. Then if people actually notice these things before election, how about they actually boycott the elections? Or rather the voting? How about that? Because that would be a solution. If people haven't voted, then how are you going to announce a winner? Far from possible, right?
Yeah.
So I think maybe that would be a solution, but that is my opinion. I hope nobody actually takes it.
Yes, the agreement was actually signed by different political leaders from the People's Progressive Party. We see Saddam Gaira, we see Basa Alira Asman from JEEMA, we see Chagwanyi Sentamo, that's the People Power, NUP principal or president. Then we have Kizza Besigye of the FDC. We see Kwago Arias as well, David Rubongoya, we have Nyanzi Fred, Puga Matthias, Zahara Mala, then we have William of the FDC. There were so many that actually signed on this. Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, our next tweet, back to your reactions on social media, comes from Transformer Cadres Association Uganda, and it says, let's revise the constitution once and for all, restore the presidential term limits, create Senate to oversee parliamentary work. We allow functionality of regional tier to balance regional development, rise qualification for members of parliament and the president from senior 6 to a university degree. And I couldn't agree more with this tweet, actually.
I am with Transformer Cadres Association Uganda.
Absolutely,
yes.
100%.
And on top of this, on top of the wisdom that Transformer Cadres Association Uganda has put here, I also hope they can reduce the salary of members of parliament.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
As well as something like 3 million, 4 million, so that you understand when you're going there, it is to serve your people back at back in your constituencies, and not just, to just get rich as fast as you
and
can.
All these, allowances that members of parliament are always getting by people. It's so sad in this country when you see what is happening in Mbale, and people actually weren't availed help rather until I think yesterday. For the past 2 days, people dying, farms being wiped away and all that, and there is no immediate help. It's so sad. But when members of parliament need allowances, when they need to fly out of the country, for whatever duties they are going to, like the money is readily available.
Yes.
It's very unfair for taxpayers, for citizens of this country.
Well, the next tweet comes in from Anko Assurance, and it says, NRM does not organize elections. There is a commission which has full rights and mandates to conduct and regulate elections all over the country, and those elections are for citizens like you. So there's no prescription that Mr. Museveni organizes anything. And I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong, because I mean, ideally the Electoral Commission is supposed,
and oversees the election
and make sure that they are free and fair. So if it is not happening, I feel he's coming from the right place. Do not accuse Museveni or the NRM. Put your blame to the Electoral Commission, but also everyone is right in their dissatisfaction.
Oh, yes. And next it comes from Kayongo Charles, and it says, first strategy is civic education to all Ugandans, patriotism to all elected leaders, and then you will witness results from power of Ugandans. Most Ugandans no longer care about their own country. Absolutely true. What he says is actually true, because civic education is very important. I think during those sessions, they can actually tell people not to be bribed, not to be given 5,000 Uganda shillings for your vote to compromise their vote. That is for someone to go to parliament. That is for someone to be the leader of this country for the next 5 years. 5,000 shillings gets done in what, a day? Or maybe a minute?
Oh, so I wouldn't even spend 5,000
I think civic education is actually, civic education I think is actually very important. However, that will bring in a whole other different budget. When it comes to Uganda, there's always, a supplementary budget for this, for that, and for the other one. If they say, okay, now civic education, but that might happen like in probably a year to the general elections of 2026, maybe 2025. There shall be seeing, budgets allocated to civic education, to this, to that, but.
It reminds me of a tweet that the Deputy Lord Mayor, Doreen Nyanjura, tweeted some time back, and he asked, but do Ugandans actually know what's happening in their country? I don't know if we actually
Maybe they couldn't care less anymore. They have lost hope in their leaders that they send to parliament, and actually not representing them, not representing their grievances, nothing. They're all about themselves and what they eat and how they survive and their families. It's very sad, and you cannot blame Ugandans for actually losing hope in these people.
Yes. Well, the next tweet comes in from Uganda at heart, and it says, every politician you see here is looking for his selfish gains. On top of that, international recognition. We Ugandans, it's very difficult to involve us in your harmful propagandas. What we need is peaceful transition of power, of which you people don't embrace. We are tired of you guys. Yes, Ugandans they're tired
very
because
tired.
of, you know, this opposition that doesn't
Hula
seem to have
balloons
solutions.
all over
Yes,
the place, yes.
You're here, then now you're defecting and going to the ruling party, and then you're causing confusion. I don't know if it's politics
or you're in
diversion,
the Forum for Democratic Change, you move to NUP, now you are attacking each other, you're not even fronting the same causes. So Ugandans are like, what? But we do see the Forum for Democratic Change has said that it supports and is ready to work with the National Unity Platform in the 11th Parliament. Yes, and this happened in the after the 2021 general elections, where we actually saw the leader, NUP being the opposition party with the most members of parliament in parliament at the moment. We saw Honorable Matthias Mpuga being appointed as the leader of opposition in parliament. And, you know, the chief whip, opposition chief whip, most of actually these opposition shadow positions
Cabinet,
were actually given to the NUP party. But the Forum for Democratic Change said we are ready to work with the NUP party. Well, we do see with this coalition, all this, you know, agreement that they have come to terms with. I don't know really if they've come to terms with it. I hope that it works out.
It might work out as long as it doesn't happen like turn out to be what happened like in 2020 when Dr. Kizza Besigye and Bobi Wine launched what they called United Forces of Change, and they actually agreed on a few activities to work on together, including a protest over the mismanagement of the COVID-19 funds. But that lasted very, very few days, and of course police just, you know, crushed them. Well, the next tweet comes in from Honorable Nubwamanya Innocent, and it says, if you rally us to be on the streets and armed, yet we are going to face an unarmed personnel, it's really negligible. Maybe if we get equipped, there I can go to face them confidently. Otherwise, we shall die, and it ends there, my opinion. And this leaves me, you know, with the one question: what's the strategy for these opposition parties that they're actually going to implement to see that they protect their vote? Because they haven't come out with clear guidelines and saying, you know what, this is what we're going to follow, this is how we're going to work this out, and etc and etc.
Well, we hope now that the agreement is done, signed, and all, maybe very soon they'll actually be putting out or letting the public know about, you know, what strategies, what guidelines they have in place, because the two by-elections are coming into effect anytime soon from now, so they might need that.
Okay, well, the next tweet comes in from Robbie. I'm sure people would want to hear what plans you propose to get the population to defend their democratic rights without putting them in harm's way, especially in view of how your team that boasts 25 years of winning elections yet has failed to defend your rights in the courts. And, you know, I see where Robbie is coming from. But where the next tweet comes in from Thomas Obita, and it says, we saw this just before the election of 2021, and some people had hope. Then something happened, and the people have never been told what it was. You will have to do some extra work to restore their trust. The path is very, 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 very thorny. And I totally agree with what Thomas Obita is actually saying here, because like we said, that we mentioned earlier on, this is not the first time that the opposition is coming together and actually signing a working agreement of sorts, or coming together under an umbrella of sorts with a common objective of defeating President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. So the fact that those previously failed, it's almost inevitable that if Ugandans are not having faith in this new agreement that you just signed, it should be understandable.
It's upon the opposition to actually enable us to have confidence in this new agreement. It's really entirely up to them. Besides that, our next tweet comes from Mukisa Patrick, and it says, all what you are claiming to be doing is legitimizing an illegitimate establishment. The more you participate in the so-called elections, the more you consolidate an autocracy, thus sinking the country deeper than anyone can afford to retrieve. Well, that is our last tweet, actually.
Yes, and I totally agree with Mukisa Patrick. At the end of the day, the controversy we're talking about, you're supporting your move to actually fight and protect your vote, but at the same time you're saying it's already predetermined. So who are you fooling, you or Ugandans? Well, that wraps up the conversation we had for you this morning on our Twitter Jabs. I've been joined by Agi Owase, and we did discuss the working agreement, I beg your pardon, that was signed by all the opposition political parties with the exception of the Democratic Party. Unfortunately, today, our guests could not come through, but I hope you got a better insight of what this working agreement is looking like for the opposition in Uganda. My name is Priva Elibas. Coming up is our Wellness, Beauty and Lifestyle segment, and I sit down with Mr. Henry as we talk about some interesting conversation that I know you will benefit from. I'll not say it, but it's coming up right shortly. This is Sunrise at Sea. Don't blink.